All right, welcome back to another episode. We apologize for the previous little blunder. For those of you who may have tuned into that, we had a bit of an audio issue. So without further ado, let's reintroduce this episode. This is going to be the vegan diet plus cooking tips, or rather the pros and cons of vegan diet and plus cooking tips. And so for those of you that are connected now or may connect later, we're going to start something new this go around where in each of our episodes, at some point, we don't even know when that point is, just at some point, whenever we happen to think about it, I guess, we're going to be introducing a secret discount code where you guys, our listeners, can get a very special discount rate on one of our products for the day or for the week, depending on the duration of that secret sale. And only our listeners, of course, and those that share this program, will be able to get that code and be able to redeem it. Because this is not something we're going to be announcing publicly on the website or anywhere else. So this is just strictly our podcast codes. So without further ado, let me bring in Dr. Lynn, and we'll get this show started. Hello, Dr. Lynn.
Amen. Hello, Brian. How are you today?
Doing great, man.
Hey, let me just open up by saying I got a new piece of information that came in toward the end of July, and attached to it were 4 other articles. Now, I, in clinical nutrition, have never, ever been a huge fan of those that have gone completely vegan. I see it so often just in the blood work that I'll see coming off of one of those kind of diets when somebody has decided I'm going to go the vegetarian lifestyle. Now, we're going to try to draw a line here and give you our interpretation of a higher vegetarian diet, not strictly, completely vegetarian diet. But I want to start out just giving you just a little bit of what these articles that all came simultaneously had to say. I'll start in August. The August article that came out last month says eating more plant foods may lower heart disease risk in young adults and older women. Eating a plant-centered diet, plant-centered, during young adulthood, and I'm talking 20s, 30s, 40s, is associated with a lower risk of heart disease in middle age, 55, 60, according to a long-term study with 30 years of follow-up. A separate study with about 15 years of follow-up found that eating more plant-based foods have been shown to lower your cholesterol. It's called the portfolio diet, associated with a lower risk of cardiovascular disease in women primarily. Now, based on the fact that cardiovascular disease is and still has been the number one killer in this country, and even in the world of COVID, that we can't yet put a finger on COVID as a cause of death. Most times, 85% of the times when COVID's in place, the cause of death is typically cardiovascular. Story number 2, let's move backwards to July. American Dietetic Association. Vegetarian diets can help prevent chronic diseases. The American Dietetic Association has released an updated position on vegetarian diets that includes such diets if this is the big thing, if well planned, are healthful and nutritious for adults, infants, children, adolescents, can help prevent and treat chronic diseases, including heart disease, cancer, obesity, and diabetes. There's your big 4. There's your big 4. That even in the world of COVID, if we put COVID as an umbrella over top of this, you get COVID, you have heart disease, you're going to have a harder time. You get COVID, you have cancer, you're going to have a harder time. You have COVID and you're obese, you're going to have a really hard time. You have COVID, obese, and diabetic, God bless you. You better be doing something positive. Let's move back to June. Vegetarian diets almost twice as effective in reducing body weight, study finds. Dieters that go on a vegetarian not only to lose weight more effectively than those on conventional low-calorie diets, but also improve their metabolism by reducing muscle fat. A new study published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition. And lastly, We're going to go back now to May. Vegetarians have a healthier level of disease markers than meat eaters. Vegetarians appear to have healthier biomarker profile than meat eaters, and this applies to adults of any age and weight, and is also unaffected by smoking and alcohol consumption. So those that smoke, those that consume a lot of alcohol are obviously at a risk of being ill. Those that, if you have alcohol, smoking, and you're eating a lot of red meat, that's the trifecta for bad health. But introduce a vegetarian diet to those people can turn things around in a very quick period of time. So my problems with it are oftentimes shown in blood work, is that we start to run into levels of low protein in the blood work. We see loss of muscle tone, and particularly B12 levels start to fall off. So we run into a form of anemia, pernicious anemia, that can become problematic later on. So, Brian, with that being said, I'm going to throw it back to you from a cooking standpoint, because I know you do a lot of the vegetarian things, a lot of more, well, not vegetarian, more plant-based diet. Give me some thoughts on what you have seen over the years on those that have gone strictly vegan, and then we'll talk a little bit about how you can introduce some modification of this into the diets of everybody listening right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the lack of protein thing and the B12 issue, because even though I don't have your background in nutrition, I have worked a lot with fitness, and I still do fitness programs actually through the office for those of you listening. And one of the issues that I've come across a lot is those who do vegetarian. Now I'm gonna kind of stop with that just a moment, because those of you listening, I know those that are truly vegan say, "Oh, wait a minute, we're not vegetarian." Those words can be mistakenly interchanged a lot. I get that, but so vegetarian has different levels. There are some vegetarians that'll do light meat like fish and things of that nature, or they'll incorporate some forms of meat type proteins on a limited basis, but still mostly 80% or greater on plants, whereas those who are vegan won't do anything that is remotely animal based. No eggs, no milk, no nothing that comes from an animal. So I'll start with vegetarianism and say that the biggest issue I come across is those who want to do any type of mass type gain. So for those that are weightlifting with me, if you're doing cardio or trying to go for weight loss, that's not too big a deal until you start trying to go for stamina. That's where I start running into the issue. So I do a lot of hiking, for those that don't know. Ooh, that was loud, Len. I got some feedback on that. Come through your mic.
Okay. I haven't done anything different. Go ahead.
All right, so hang tight. Let me mute you real quick. Let's see. All right, that should help. There we go. Nope, it didn't help. I guess you're listening to this show through through the computer. Okay, so the issue with the vegetarianism is that even though you'll be able to put on a little bit more muscle mass than a straight vegan, the stamina becomes an issue because there's not enough amino acids or proteins, or there's just not enough there, carbs in some cases, to help keep the stamina up. So going back to the hiking thing, a lot of times I'll do anywhere from about 10 to 12 miles a day on a slow day, 15 if I'm really trying to push it. And a lot of times people that are vegetarians that go with me that are largely plant-based, they can go, for a while, especially those who've conditioned themselves to do it. But those who don't exercise on a regular basis, or at least do vigorous type exercise, usually put her out pretty fast. That's just been my experience. I'm not saying that's what everybody does. Just the bulk of those who base more plant proteins, the stamina fizzles pretty fast. They'll have a lot of stamina up to a point, and I couldn't put a mileage on it because, of course, everyone's different. But for high elevation, really high strenuous type situations, it's usually 6, maybe 7 miles, whereas those I know who eat a lot more meat and have a lot more complete proteins, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Even if they don't exercise on a regular basis, a good example, actually, I've got a friend of mine who's a truck driver. Now, any of you who know anything about truck driving know that they get basically no exercise at all. All right, his first hike was a little bit rough. He did about 4 or 5 miles, and he was pretty much done. Now, keep in mind, though, this is a guy that eats a pretty balanced diet. He's actually pretty good about his diet, but he does eat meat. And he's basically had not done any exercise in his life that I know of, really, up to that point, and was still able to get about 5 miles with me. Well, the next time he went, though, being slightly more acclimated to that type of exercise, he was able to do almost 10 with me. Now, we're only talking a very short span of time there in getting his stamina up, whereas those who've gone with me who had more of a plant-based diet, even after our 6th, 7th, 8th hike, are still having troubles keeping up around the 8-mile mark, especially anything beyond that. So, to answer your question, I find that it's difficult for them to keep up with their endurance and stamina with things, and then also, as you mentioned, the muscle mass. Now, I want to pause there for a moment, Lynn, and ask you rather, about the complete protein. I know, or rather, I've heard in the past that plant-based diets, even though you do have a lot of your amino acids in there through the different plants, lentils, and various other things you can eat, you cannot get what is called a complete protein. Now, have you heard of that, or would you like to elaborate on that?
I think that's extremely true, because when you look at the chemical structure of protein, especially that comes from animal-based, chicken, beef, pork to some extent, and you put this under a biochemistry microscope and you look at the chemical structure of that entity that you're eating. I've often used the analogy that if you eat an apple, the molecular size of that is about the size of a dime. If you eat a piece of red meat, it's about the molecular size of a Volkswagen. So, I mean, it's not just a little bit larger. It's enormously larger. So it does take much more work to digest. But the structure of those larger groupings of protein have many, many more. In fact, all 13 of the most important amino acids that aren't strictly, there are some strands available, as you said, on beans and lentils and, a lot of the plant sources of protein, which are fine. Tofu, you can get it from soy, etc. But you don't get the full amino acid blend. Why is that important? Because those amino acids, in my opinion, are the foundation of all of your neurotransmitters in the body. So don't see studies that have gone longer than 30 years. I haven't seen long-term studies about vegetarian diets that have gone from like age 20 to age 70. But I would have to believe that there's going to be a link to a vegetarian diet and various, I'll call it mental acuity issues, depression, anxiety, those kind of things. A lot of people say they go on a vegan diet to try to get out of that mode, and they feel better with those, maybe temporarily, but I think the long term is if you're going to do that, you should adjunct your diet with more complex proteins that you can get supplementally. And I think even adding something like our branched chain amino acid tablets, if you're going to do the vegan diet, add some more straight amino acids to that diet as well. It's going to help you get the full complex of what you need to stay healthy.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely agreed. And if you can find something like, say, a protein powder that you like, a lot of times, even if it's a plant-based powder, like a pea protein powder, or I think soy still exists. I can't remember. They were phasing that out at one point because it was spiking guys' estrogens and various things. But, whatever plant-based protein powder you go for, if you decide you like that, a lot of times they will add a lot of those complete proteins, BCAAs, and a lot of the other things that Lynn has mentioned. And on that note, Lynn, would you like to mention at this time what our secret code is? Since
our secret code, yeah, this is the same thing that Mike Lindell does, the My Pillow dude. he'll run a special sale using that access code that's right there on the screen. Well, our access code for this special sale for you listening right now that'll go toward, we're going to run this through Saturday close of business, is the word vegan, VEGAN. That's the magic word. And if you use that magic word, you can get 25% off one of our or all three of our vegetarian-based protein powders. Number one, Net Zero Keto. That's a plant-based protein that is attempting to put the body into ketosis in a quick period of time. Net Zero Carbs inside of that protein as well by Nutritional Frontiers. Number two is our Power Cleanse. Now, we've used that dramatically through our initial 90-day weight loss plan, and we continue to use that as a supportive. And then lastly, our Super Shakes, which is, as Brian said, our pea-based protein that we really had to work hard with Nutritional Frontiers to get the taste just right, because a lot of times pea-based proteins weren't the tastiest of protein powders, but they've done an amazing job of getting the price down and getting the taste correct. All you have to do is call our office, 678-228-8900. Use that access code VEGAN, and those protein powders can be had at 25% off. Those are three that we don't ever run on sale, but we decided to do it today because of this topic.
Yes.
Brian, can I bring up something else as far as this whole concept? Because I get a lot of people, especially in the world of Christianity, that say, look, Genesis 1:29, and God said, behold, I've given you every plant yielding seed that's on the face of the earth, and every tree with a seed in the fruit. You shall have them for food. Saying that God commanded us to eat this way. And for those that do that, I happen to just jot down a few other scriptural issues. Genesis 9:3, every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. Just as I gave you green plants, I give you everything. Romans 14, as for the one who is weak in faith, welcome him, but not to quarrel over options. One person believes he may eat anything, while the weak person eats only vegetables.
Yes, and we should mention as well, that doesn't necessarily mean weak physically, although it may lead to that. It's speaking specifically in that particular instance, weak in faith, that you're weak in faith because you're stopping you're not adhering to actual scripture. You're just stopping in Genesis when he's talking about eating plants, and you don't take to heart other things that are mentioned in scripture, as Lynn has already brought up as well.
Yeah, and lastly, in that same chapter 14 of the book of Romans, it is good not to eat meat or drink wine or do anything that causes your brother to stumble. So again, you can take these out of where they actually appear in there, and a lot of people twist around the interpretation of these. But again, I think when we use good common sense, and I think you need to pray about what you need to eat. I really do. I think you need to pray about what type of diet you're going to go on, and again, adhere to that. It can be a lifestyle change. Brian, let's just talk about doing a modification of this. Give us some ideas. You do really well at this. Give us some ideas like a vegetarian type breakfast, a vegetarian type lunch that sort of gives you enough protein in there, and maybe even how you can adjunct a dinner with just a minimum amount of protein, maybe animal-based protein, along with more of the plant-based on the side. Just give us some ideas of a nice-looking day meal-wise. Okay,
well, even though this is a vegan-based episode, I do want to touch on something, as we've already kind of brought up during this episode as well, the vegetarian and vegan, and that is that vegans don't do anything animal-based at all. All right, so no milk, no no cheese, no dairy, no anything that's made from animals, no eggs, nothing. Whereas a vegetarian, which is kind of what I would label myself as, will accept some meats depending on different things. So first off, I want to touch on the vegan side of things, since again that's what this topic is about. So if you are vegan, then obviously all of your meals are going to be the bulk of fruits, fresh fruits, or vegetables. including your breakfast, unless you're using alternatives like plant-based. I can't really say eggs, but you guys know what I mean. Plant-based breakfasts, and then of course I've had vegan burgers. They aren't half bad. Some of them aren't half bad, to be honest. So you guys already know your diet. Veganism is a very personalized thing, I think. And most people I know that are vegans, they have a very personal preference on what they choose for their diet. So I'm not going to tell you guys about what I think might be better per se in your diet, since that is very personal. The only thing I will say is that in a vegan diet, as Lynn has mentioned, as I have mentioned in earlier in this episode, I would really strongly encourage you try to find some way to incorporate complete proteins in your diet, whether it's once a day, at lunch. Breakfast would be a good time to do it. We were talking about these protein shakes and things that a lot of times will add these complete proteins, knowing that the vegan diet is so limited in the foods, being able to get them through the foods themselves. They'll add these as additives or supplements, for lack of a better term, into these protein shakes and things. So think about maybe a plant-based protein shake as a complement to your breakfast or your lunch, for those of you who are vegan. So getting off of that, I'm going to go to the vegetarian side of things, which is what I am more or less. And now, I don't particularly care for red meat too much. I do try to avoid that because, as a general rule, red meat is fattier. Red meat will actually boost your cholesterol levels, and not in a good way, of course. And it does have a lot of other negative sides to it. Granted, yeah, it has a lot of protein, but then again, so do white meats. Turkey, chicken, fish. Those are among my favorites. I really don't care for ham. Never really have cared for the taste of that too much. And that is, I know it's kind of sort of it's in between white and red, but I wouldn't recommend that. It's pretty fatty. Pork in general is pretty fatty. So for breakfast, turkey sausage is a good option, as opposed to, pork sausage, going back to that fatty issue. So incorporate maybe some eggs. Organic is better. You get usually a better, healthier source of omega oils and essential fatty acids from good, natural, or organic egg sources. I go back to a previous episode where I recommended that you guys look into co-ops, farms that offer co-ops. You'll get some good eggs from them. Turkey sausage, and even if you go vegetarian, like the way I prefer and the direction I'm pushing right now, or suggesting right now, you can still incorporate protein shakes. I even do that myself. A lot of times I won't do a traditional American type breakfast in the morning. I actually do a piece of fruit, sometimes a couple. This morning's a good example. I had a fresh mango, banana, and a protein shake. That was my breakfast. So, find some way to incorporate protein in your breakfast. That's the start of your day. Whether that's a protein powder or a meat, your preference, or eggs for that matter, And then for lunch, same thing. Try to find a protein that you like to add to your lunch. Any of the things I just mentioned, aforementioned things. Fish, I love fish, so I'm going to always recommend that. Fish, chicken, you can even do turkey for lunch, of course, turkey sandwiches and things. And then complement that with your favorite fresh fruit or vegetable or combination. Add veggies, good fresh veggies, good fresh spinach, organic spinach onto your sandwich instead of lettuce. I don't like lettuce. It's like, I literally call it crunchy water. There's like no nutrients per se in lettuce. I mean, it has a little. I get that, but it's it's not much. Go with spinach, all right. And then if you need water, instead of getting water through your lettuce, just drink water on the side. On that note too, if you guys aren't doing it, especially in these hotter months, I know we're getting cooler now, but you guys need to be doing at least 3 liters of water a day. I really like to push water. I don't drink anything really but herbal tea and water, so you'll hear me mention water a lot with meals as well. So good protein source. Keep the grains, keep the carbs to a minimum if you can for lunch. Unless you're doing a workout, then you might want to kick it up a little bit, but try to go easy on it. And if you do carbs, especially for those of you who are a little sugar sensitive, hypoglycemic or even diabetic, incorporate some complex carbs into your lunch as well, because you'll kind of sort of trick your body. You can get away with doing simple carbs like breads and things by doing complex, because you force your metabolism to slow down the digestion, and it doesn't spike your blood sugar with those simple carbs. That's not a free ticket saying you can eat anything. That's just a little trick I learned a while back on how to help slow your digestion of the carbs down. And then for dinner,
yeah, can I
sure,
interject something here, Brian?
Yeah.
And I really think if you're doing these kind of diets, so many people say I'm going to stay away from gluten altogether too. We sort of blend those together. We think that that's the healthier. And sure, most times when you take gluten out of your diet, you feel better, obviously. But let's not forget the attributes, the vitamin attributes of whole grain, multi-grain breads. Whole grains aren't evil. You got to limit that. But again, when we're talking about putting these meals together, and I'm going to give a big thumbs up for those of you that have a Publix near you, they're 5-grain bread, which now they've gotten smart enough to know that they can slice it for you really thin so that you can have the feeling as if you had an entire piece of bread with you, maybe with some good healthy spread on there, along with what Brian is saying. Keep you fuller longer, but you're going to get the attributes of the crunchiness of those full grains. Don't just discard those to the side. If you aren't celiacs and you can at least handle that, you can actually put in a lot of good nutrients by that thin slice of bread. I'm not saying limit it to maybe 2 slices a day. I think you can still do that and still make a healthy meal out of it.
Yeah, good point. Thank you for adding that. And on that note, too, I will add, going back to the lunch and the breakfast thing before I get into dinner, one of the things that I do that's been a great help to me, and I'd strongly encourage those of you to do it too, is incorporate a lot of fiber. Most of us don't get much fiber. I really didn't realize that myself until I started doing it myself. I would say the average person, Lynn can probably knows these statistics better than I do, but I would guess the average person probably eats half or less, 50% or less of the daily fiber that they really need to help push the cholesterol out of their gut and their bodies, and to help just detox themselves pretty much on a daily basis. But if you do add... Go ahead.
Anybody that's worked with me, and again, I'm not a dietitian. I don't pretend to do even what Brian is doing as far as designing meals. I'm going to give you the reasons why. And oftentimes when I talk to you about your food choices, I say, you've got 5 groups of food. What do you mean? We got protein, fats, and carbs. There's only 3. There's 5. There's protein, there's fats, there's carbs. Fiber is, as Brian has said very well here, is listed as a food group, as is water. So as Brian said very distinctly, water is part of your intake every day, as is fiber. So those of you that stick with those big 3, protein, fats, carbs, and I count my carbs, don't forget to count your fiber as well. It becomes a crucial factor, not only to keep you fuller longer, but as Brian said, it binds up all those lipids in your gut and helps to lower your cholesterol, can help lower your blood sugar, can help keep you regular. When 80% of this country is constipated or having irritable bowel syndrome, most times, and I find it even with me, if I go 2 or 3 days and really limit the amount of fiber I take in, man, I have problems. So if I put the fiber back in, everything returns back to normal. You don't have to live on laxatives. You don't have to live on Miralax. You can actually add more fiber to your diet on a regular basis and get away with a good balanced meal that's going to do a lot for you.
Yeah, thanks for that add, Lynn. And to add to that even, the fiber, as Lynn mentioned, will help make you feel fuller longer. And but a couple of other things I'd like to mention too before I move on to dinner is that, one, it's a vicious circle. The reason I keep bringing up the water is that those of you who decide you want to up your fiber, remember it is very bulky and it is like a sponge. It will absorb the crap out of all fluids in your system, and that's how that stuff operates. It swells up, it binds, as Lynn mentioned, and it pushes things out of your system. So with that in mind, if you do increase your fiber, make sure you increase your water intake, because those that don't, those who think, oh, I can increase my fiber and immediately get benefits, well... Yes and no, but you might find you're going to be a little more stopped up than usual because you don't have the water to push it through, and it's going to actually hurt you, and then you're going to think, oh crap, fiber's bad. No, it's not. You just have to drink more water to offset the amount of extra fiber you're getting. So the vicious cycle I was talking about is that protein is a very dense substance, takes a lot to get it out. So a lot of times those that have a high protein diet, those of you that don't know this already, also need fiber to help push that stuff out once it gets digested. Well, if you're increasing your fiber, again, I already mentioned you got to increase your water. Well, to add to that, protein takes a lot of digestion. It takes about twice as much effort for your system to digest, not counting the additional steps, digestion steps it takes over simple carbs, including nutrient-dense carbs like veggies and things, to digest. So there again, you need more water. So if you're going to do more protein, more fiber with your workout, whether it's for weight loss or whatever it is you're doing it for, or just for health, such as in my case, then make sure you add water to it. That's, again, why I go back to the water thing. For example, I go through about 2 gallons of water a day, and that's about what my system needs to be able to do my protein and my fiber intake. So on that note, for those of you who want to lose weight and are counting carbs, remember, technically speaking, fiber does count toward your carbs. So if you're going to eliminate carbs out of your diet, then you're going to be doing nutrient-dense carbs. Those of you who already know what that is, I don't need to explain that. Those of you who don't know what that is, the simple version is that it's not empty carbs, not soda, not chips, not things that just are carbs and don't have any nutrient value to them. It's vegetables, fresh fruit and things of that nature, and a lot of those fresh foods will also have a lot of fiber, not always, but a lot of times. And again, that fiber does count towards your total carbs per day, so do keep that in mind if you are counting carbs. If you're going to choose between that freebie soda or whatever you want to call your freebie, then honestly, if it were me, I'd rather put it towards fiber than I would toward a freebie soda. But that's just me. All right, so going on to
one other thing, Brian, when you said that, is if you are on a very strict carbohydrate restriction, and as Brian said very clearly, it's also going to limit your fiber then. You're going to probably have to add some powdered fiber to your shake every day. So take a good look at Nutritional Frontiers has one called Frontier Fiber, which is, again, plant-based. Doesn't really add into your carbs, but it actually adds a nice amount of soluble fiber, not the Metamucil insoluble type. Soluble fiber goes crystal clear. Can add that to your drink every day and get your fiber numbers back up so that you're getting the full benefit of fiber, even if you're not putting it in from a food source.
All right, good ad there. And then for those that don't know about this, real quickly, you got insoluble, soluble fiber difference. Soluble, as Lynn mentions, clear. It dissolves quickly. That's good for overall gut health. That's good for feeding the gut bacteria and things of that nature. The insoluble fiber is what is called or known as roughage, or what I call roughage at least. That's the stuff that will not break down in your gut. That is the stuff that binds all the icky crap that is lining your intestines, your stomach, etc. All the stuff that literally works like a little scrubby pad, like a little Brillo pad in your stomach, and that's what grabs all that stuff and helps push it out of your system. So it is. I would say it's good to have both, but soluble fiber is a nice addition to any meal, as it does help with supporting a good, healthy gut and the cultures that live there. Lynn, was there anything else you wanted to add to that before I go to dinner?
No, let's go to dinner because we got to wrap this up pretty quick. We thought we were going to get this in a half hour, and obviously we can't. But
we're close.
Let's go through dinner, and then I'm going to give you that scale one more time.
Okay, so dinner. Pretty open here. I do want to mention, however, that not just from experience, but also, personal experience, but also experience from those I've worked with, for the love of all that is good, do not drink or eat too much protein for your evening meal. All right. Now, I know a lot of you want to limit carbs. I get that. You don't want to pack on the fat overnight. I got a little clue here for you, though, a little tip. Your body does not see what you intake the way your brain does. This is a very common oversight for a lot of people. So you think, okay, I can load up on veggies, I can load up on fruits, and I can load up on all these different things that are healthy for me before I go to bed, and that's good for me, right? It depends, actually. If you eat just enough to get you full, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, where you don't overeat, then yeah, that's not such a bad thing. If you get too much, whether it's maybe an extra slice of bread, whatever it is during your meal, even if it's a protein, and I'll get back to why I really recommend limiting protein of an evening. But strictly speaking, carbs and fats, if you get too much, then your body doesn't see those carbs as veggies, all right? Your body sees that as calories it cannot utilize. So guess what happens? It becomes fat when you sleep. So it doesn't really matter if you're trying to eat healthy of an evening if you're not also watching what you eat and how much of it that you're eating. So keep that in mind as you are considering your evening meal. And, of course, don't make it too late either. No late snacks. If you're going to do a late snack, I would say fiber if nothing else. A lot of times I'll do oatmeal, for example, for my late night snack. So talking about the protein thing, the protein really needs to be limited largely because those of you who work out and those of you who eat a lot of protein on a regular basis are already going to know what it means when I say you get the protein sweats. Ugh, that is horrible. All right, so what that is, as I mentioned, is that the body, it takes more work for the body to break down protein as a general rule. Well, what happens whenever your body has to work harder? It gets hot, just like when you exercise, etc. So if you eat too much protein of an evening, guess what's going to happen when you sleep? If you don't already get unnaturally warm when you sleep, getting too much protein of an evening will definitely cause that. And then I go back to my previous comment as well, where if you get too many calories, including from protein, of course, of an evening, and your body can't use it that evening, then it just goes straight into fat. So if you do feel like you need a lot of protein of an evening for whatever that reason is, you got done with a late night workout and you need the amino acids, or you have other issues where you need specific amino acids of an evening while you sleep, because there are some benefits to having amino acids when you sleep for bodybuilding, body repair, etc., etc. I would probably say something a little bit on the leaner side, a lean meat, something easy to digest like fish, or maybe I say well cooked is what I started to say, well cooked chicken, but I would just stick with fish, something really, really soft. If you guys, those of you out there who can't do fish, the next best thing really is a protein powder, because a lot of those are very lean, and they have just the essential amino acids that you need, and they aren't going to cook you of an evening. And even if that's too much, there are plenty of options out there, as Lynn has already mentioned, for supplements that have just aminos in them. Lynn, you'll have to remind me. We have one by Foster, and I can't remember what it's called. What is that one?
It's just called multi-amino.
Okay.
It's called multi-amino. It has the 13 essential amino acids in it in a tablet form. Now,
right.
The only disadvantage to this thing is it's a large tablet.
Right.
And a lot of people that have trouble swallowing pills, it may be a little difficult, but really does work well for those that don't have trouble swallowing pills.
Right. Okay. So to end this then, there's a lot of different options for you guys, and I think we've given quite a few during this episode, but each of you knows your systems better than I do, of course. So even though I can make these suggestions, listen to your system. Your system will let you know what it needs. If of an evening you get too hot after a meal, you might have to cut back on your protein, because that might be what's overheating or cooking you at night, and go with one of the options, either a protein powder or, as Lynn mentioned, one of the horse pills. And then for the rest of your diet, just listen to your system. And if you have any other questions about diet, or are a little concerned about something your body is telling you but that you can't quite clue in on, give us a call. It's in our description for each of our episodes, and to give it to you now, our number is 678-228-8900, and then in our description you can also go to our website, book an appointment with us, and we'll be happy to talk with you about any issues or any concerns you might have concerning your diet or something your body might be telling you that you can't quite clue in on.
That's good. Now, again, the magic code, the secret code word for today is vegan, VEGAN. Just call our office, 678-228-8900, 25% off Net Zero Keto and or Power Cleanse and or Super Shake. 3 different vegan-sourced protein powders. They can go over the flavoring with you, etc. They're all very good tasting. And again, take advantage. Brian, next week, I've had numerous emails over the last week as Joe Biden is making a fool of himself worldwide and trying to jam, vaccines down our throats, and people are rebelling now.
Right.
But here's the question that I got a lot over the last couple of weeks. Why aren't the vaccines working better? Why aren't they working better? Why would we need a booster? Why? So next week, we're going to go back into a vaccine discussion again. Even for you guys that are anti-vaccine, tune in. I'm not going to be selling you on vaccines, but I'm going to tell you, for those that have gotten the vaccine, why it's not working as good as it could or as good as it should, and how can you adjunct that with supplements to get a much better effect. So we'll go into that next week again. I didn't think we'd have to go back to COVID again, but it's still there, and we're going to go into why. It's a big question everybody has. Why aren't they working better than they are?
I'll
give
you
you
guys
that next week.
I'll give you guys a little hint on that. It's just between now and next week. Imagine why there isn't a magic diet pill that exists. Like the perfect diet pill that exists. And if you can kind of wrap your head around that and figure out why there isn't a perfect, quote, magic diet pill, then you'll probably figure out where we're going with this.
And keep in mind, too, why every single snowflake is unique.
Right.
We'll throw that in there, too, to think about. Okay. Let's wrap it up, Brian.
All right, man.
Good show.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. For those of you who have listened to us live, and we look forward to hearing from you, we look forward to having you tune in next week. And do keep in mind, guys, that we do have a live chat through Spreaker. And if you have the app or if you log into the website, and you can find that on our website, actually, you can find our channel, our Spreaker channel. You can send us questions as we're doing a show live, and it's a first come, first serve type basis. And if we see your questions in here at the end of our show, we'll try to address those questions based on the topic of the show, of course. And we will be happy to try to answer any questions you guys might have about the show. All right. Thanks again for tuning in. God bless. We'll see you next week.